a psychic could predict or perceive a certain kind of future, but it's always going to constantly change because it depends on one's own decisions.
Right.
What I try to do with it is like design an energy suit. And then I have all these options for you to learn to speak your own energy. The brain has lateral and front and back lobe, and all of this is perceiving 360 degrees of information. We also receive the information through our senses, which we call perception. So by understanding that pattern of information through your symbolisms, you can create a new reality.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, and today I have a very special guest. She is a Yandara alum of 10 years, coming here throughout the years many times. She is a psychic, yoga teacher, hypnotherapist, and quantum leap therapist. Welcome to the show, Ana Cabrera.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I said it with the Hebrew accent.
It's great.
Ana Cabrera.
Both work.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. As I was telling you before we started, where everything began for me to make sense, to take form. This was my first place where I came to do a yoga teacher training, whenever it is that my soul was ready to start this psychic path, which I've only been able to name for the last couple of months, actually. I didn't have a word or a definition of how to fit everything it is I do into a word. And it just recently came to me, and it is truly an honor to be here sharing where it all started for me.
Yay. I'm so happy to have you here. And I can also share that we met each other, I think it was a year ago, here at Yandara, and we had a hypnotherapy session together that was truly revolutionary and memorable for me. And of course we connected, and when I knew I was coming here now, I knew I wanted to do this interview with you, and I haven't even heard about all that you've been through in this last year. Now that I know, I'm even more excited. So let's dive in. Let's start with being a psychic, because I think that is the most unfamiliar territory for most people, and yet very intriguing.
Okay.
So please explain, what does it mean to be a psychic, and how did you arrive to this understanding that that's really the work that you do?
Okay, so first of all, I want to tell everybody that everybody can be a psychic. It's not a special gift that I have. It's to tune into your your psyche. Some people say it like that. And what it is, it's people that have worked more with the energy, like the psychic speaks energy. It's a lot related to the third eye, like pure consciousness, no judgment, you just allow everything to be. And yeah, I've always connected with energy and have felt the energy, but I always say it's been hard because it's like I speak the 95% of the unconscious world, and it's been a interesting path for me to be able to name it and word it into the 5% of our rational mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like there's all this field of information. And then when I want to speak about it or put it into words, I have to like compress all of it to a 5%, which is what the mind truly processes in a rational world.
Language is really so limiting when it comes to this world of energy.
It is. It truly is. Yeah. It's been more than 10 years, obviously, but at least 10 conscious years of like working with it. It started with yoga, the somatic body. I always say that our body is our oracle, and it always tells us what we truly need. And if we learn how to communicate with our body, you know, he is going to guide exactly everything, like what to eat, what to wear, where to be, climate, seasons. It's this tool where our soul happens to live is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it is also only 5% of the material world where we live, but our energy is 95%. So it's a lot more than just this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that being said, in this whole process, I struggled to find a definition because I do a lot of different things, like you named it, like healing hypnosis, QLT, access bars yoga. And everybody tried to define me, you know, that I've been trying to put myself in a box for so many years, like, and everybody would ask the question, like, Anna, like, how do we tell the world what is it you do? Because you do so many things, like, what's your title? Mm-hmm. And it's been 10 years of struggle till it finally came. Actually,
what was that moment?
It was a gift. I was heading myself there. I kind of read it. Saw that one coming. So yeah, once I started working like with my identity branding, and which is where I'm at today, 10 years later of working and doing whatever needs to be done. My cousin and his girlfriend came for a surprise trip, and I ended up channeling some information for my cousin at the beach, which was truly a bit uncomfortable because I knew there was a lot of information. It was from one of his ancestors.
Wow.
And I had to ask for permission, but it always touched another fiver when it's someone so close, like especially family. And yeah, he gave me the permission. So it was like a beautiful thing to do. That day, I was only a channel, and his girlfriend was there. And then I remember talking to them and to her and whatever happened. And then at the end of that day, she had a book from Maria Magdalena. And she's like, can I read you something? And I was like, yeah, sure, you know. And she read this paragraph, which I still hold that picture, of what a psychic is, you know. And as she was reading, I just felt it. It was like, that's what I am. Like, oh my God, now it makes so much sense, you know. And it described everything so beautiful, because even though it's true that we can read or perceive energy, it is also true that we cannot manipulate anybody else's energy, because whatever you create for the future or whatever you do is based on your decisions. And that is what actually creates your reality. So, and that's what it says, you know, it's a psychic could predict or perceive a certain kind of future, but it's always going to constantly change because it depends on one's own decisions,
right?
What they create. So that just felt like, yes, that was the definition that could put together in a box all the tools and all the preparation I've been going through, because what I try to do with it is like design an energy suit. That's what I like to call it. And then I have all these options for you to learn to speak your own energy.
So we each have an energy language, and it's about learning that language.
Yeah, like learning to communicate with the psychic that lives in you.
Oh, I love that. And it actually really resonates with me for my experience of how I've been connecting to my energy. It's really about learning the language. And the way that I've been learning it is really through sensations, like you said, through the body. Like, this feels good, doesn't feel good. Oh, that's how my energy is telling me which direction I should and shouldn't go. And the more you experience it, the more conscious and aware of it you are, the more you learn that language.
Yeah, and also the more you start to trust it.
Yeah.
Because your intuition is always there. Like there's always something that says like, do it or don't do it. I also like to explain part of it with like physics and science, literally.
Great.
So there's like different parts of our brain, but our brain is always working, right? So the lateral parts of our brain are capturing information. So I don't know if you've ever had an experience where like they're throwing a ball and you didn't see it, but you moved away, like you reacted and it's happened, you know, or something is gonna fly and you just instinctively know to remove. It's because the brain is perceiving 360, you know, so there is all this information coming into your field. And then we also receive the information through our senses, which we call perception. So your skin is sensing something. We think our eyes are only seeing that, but truly our eyes are seeing.
Yeah.
And it goes with all of the senses. But we really can't just like download all that information, because otherwise it would be overwhelming for our brain to process, like, I'm seeing all of this, but listening to all of that, but it just is like, oh no. But all that information, that's why that's the 95%.
Yeah.
So that's what's creating your energy field. And all of that speaks to you sometimes in the rational mind and sometimes in the unconscious world, which works through symbolisms. And yeah, that's how we are capturing all our information. And the idea is that you have these tools, and I'm sure there are many others, but these are the ones I teach, that are the ones I've learned and specialized in, to communicate with all these different aspects of the being. You know, the subconscious symbolisms, which would be healing hypnosis, through healing hypnosis.
Go a little bit into each one of them. What does it mean? How does it show up? How does it look? How can we recognize it?
Okay, so in healing hypnosis, that technique specific, it's important to mention that there's different kinds of hypnotherapists, and some people are just used to seeing like entertainment hypnosis, you know, so they're scared because they think somebody's going to manipulate them.
Yeah.
And then there's clinical hypnosis. There's different hypnosis. The one I do and practice and what I'm certified in is healing hypnosis, which is through an active trance, a state of yoga nidra, actually, where your mind and your body are fully relaxed. We enter your subconscious and information starts to show up to you in symbolisms, and it goes through your senses. So
is that the only way to access these symbols? Or because I always love to give information for people to be independent in their practice. So how can somebody access that by themselves? Or is it possible?
You can do auto hypnosis. You know, I've done breath work, and I know breath work also has information. You could pretty much access it through any energy tool. You can do it through meditation, through your breath. You can also, some people access it through yoga, through Kundalini, for example. That's a very active yoga and moves a lot of energy. I've also been able to access it through Kundalini. What healing hypnosis does is you don't only access it, you learn to question what those symbolisms represent for you. So that's what healing hypnosis is about. So there is all this information representing itself in these symbolisms. So the only thing I do through a healing hypnosis session is to ask questions to inquiry your symbolisms so you receive your own information. Because again, my interpretation of a symbolism will not be the same as yours. For example, if you see horse, right? For me, a horse might mean strength, but for you, a horse might mean freedom, right?
Yeah.
And that's where your own interpretation creates, like in healing hypnosis, we call it the path to work a samskara. And a samskara is a Sanskrit word. It's the imprint of the information, of the energetic information, which can be stored as beliefs, emotions in somewhere of your body, because we are 80%, 70%, 80% water. So that imprints there, it's a samskara. And energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. So whatever samskara has been imprinted in you for whatever reason or purpose could have served a purpose 10 years ago, but might not seem the same purpose for you in the present moment. So what we do in healing hypnosis is we go through the map of your symbolisms to see what samskara is ready to be transformed for you. And with your own information, you get to choose, like, okay, I used to use this samskara for this purpose, but now I want to grab this energy and put it to service for this present moment.
So let me just see if I'm understanding correctly. We have different experiences in our life.
Yes.
And those experiences produce memories, emotions, beliefs, thoughts that we have, and that imprints as memories in our body. And then when we're more mature, that belief might not be useful for us anymore, and we try to transform that energy into something that's more relevant and beneficial for us in the present moment. And we understand the imprints or where they are by understanding the symbols that come to us in different practices.
So by understanding the symbols, you understand the information that samskara, that imprint, has for you.
Yeah.
So let's say the samskara can hold belief, emotions, learn patterns.
Do you have an example maybe?
Yeah. I recently worked with a patient who's been like, she over-exercised herself. She pushed herself to the limits in every way, her body, you know? And suddenly one day she woke up and she had like a cancer, a very aggressive cancer, and it really didn't make sense to her. And it all happened very fast. And then for whatever reason, she and I ended up meeting after she was treated and everything, but she still had like to figure out what this cancer represented for her and why it was there. And so she came for a healing hypnosis session to that specific purpose. And there was a lot of things that builded that cancer up for her. But the reason or the connection she had is her father passed away when she was very young. And at some point in the hypnosis, she remembered a moment when she was exercising and her father was her best cheerleader. So she kept pushing herself and whatever it was in her life and, you know, through that, because unconsciously, it's the way she had chosen to keep him alive.
Oh, that's beautiful, actually.
And yes, and she got to a moment, again, in the mountain one day when she was meditating and she was just like breathing. It was a complete opposite, more of an adult. And she remembered that in that moment, she connected with him again. So for her, that imprint, that samskara of keep pushing and keep fighting and resilience and like working your body so hard went to you might not need to do that anymore because you don't need to do this to have me with you. You know, like I'm also there in just the power of breath and stillness.
Wow.
And yeah, it was such a beautiful moment, you know, and there was a beautiful breakthrough. So that would be like an example of information we have that we're not aware of, but has a purpose. You know, this one in some way was a grief, an illness, emotions. There was a lot in there.
Yeah.
And another beautiful part I would like to point out about this is that you come whenever you're actually ready to see it. Like I've never received a patient that is going to work through something it's not. Like throughout all the methods or medicines that I've tried, it's one, or for me, it's one that works from love and light, and where your soul chooses what you need to go through in that moment because you're ready to do it from a very like surrendering and lovable place. So yeah, that for me is also super magic about that specific tool, that it is a surrender of your soul to be like, we need to let go of this, because usually samskaras are our biggest fears or our biggest blockages. So we, in healing hypnosis, always say, you know, we're hunters of our fears, or we're hunters of the samskaras, because through that you see the light. Like once you go, you, and that's how the neurotransformation happens. Like in your brain cells, you start to create a new pattern because you can consciously understand what it is it was that was stopping you, and now what you're consciously choosing to create. So by understanding that pattern of information through your symbolisms, you can create a new reality.
Wow. That's so moving and incredible.
Yeah.
And inspiring. And I think also another important and interesting part in it is that she had to go through this whole process with the sickness in order to be able to really look at this memory or samskara that was imprinted, and how so many of us have different manifestations in the body of things that we're not able or knowing to look at, and how the body really speaks to us. And when we choose to be conscious of that and really use that as a starting point, as a clue, as a light to shine on the things that are in our subconscious, then it can be even something that we might find some gratitude for or appreciation. So that was actually just one of the points, right? The symbolism. You also mentioned signs. Could you also elaborate about that? How does the universe work through signs or our energy?
Well, what I was explaining before, the part of the brain and the part of the perception and how you're capturing information. So that was one of the things that, like, the brain has lateral and front and back lobe, and all of this is perceiving 360 degrees of information. The way I was explaining, like what your eyes see, like there is a lot more information. So that's literally a literal way to see how we're receiving information, but we're not processing all of it all the time because it's so overwhelming. And another one, a fact actually, and this goes more into QLT, more a bit into the rational world. So we as humans go between 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day.
Wow.
That's what they've been able to measure, like a human mind. And out of those thoughts, 95% are unconscious. So we're not even aware. We don't, like, we're not aware there's 50,000 thoughts per day. Like, I'm not counting, you know? And I believe 90% of them are on repetitive mode. So they're just like in autopilot. And that explains a lot of, there's things that we do in autopilot that we don't even think about throughout our day, routines, different ways. That's part of those 90% autopilot. And there's 85% which are toxic. You know, what I've come to understand of the toxic ones is the environment we grew up in, the systems, they were based a lot in like fear and power. And we have a lot of conditioning around this about what's right and what's wrong and what you should do and what you should not do, and all these polarities instead of just allowing us to be full experience.
Are you talking about this in relation to things that block us from connecting to our energy?
It could be, yeah. That's another way of seeing it. I was speaking more like what we actually think is rational, which is our brain, which is our 5%, which allows us to process words and thoughts and put sentences together. A is only 5% of the 95, well, the 100%, but that we are receiving in energy and information. And the other part is a lot of that conditioning, you know, is from the external, the way we grew up, the environment we grew up, the way we were taught, the way, depending where you grew up, what country, what school, your parenting, if you practice a religion, if you didn't, they conditioned ourselves, you know?
So it's preventing us from picking up on all the information that we're being sent.
Well, you will have all that information, but we sometimes just block it because we judge it, right? We don't allow it to be. Information is just information. There is no good, there's no bad, there is no right or wrong. It simply is. We are the ones that put the tags, and we are the ones that judge this should be or shouldn't be.
Right. And that takes us away from actually just receiving it as what it is. Yeah.
And by receiving it as what it is, you could choose, you know, Access Bars, for example, talks about this, that we could actually choose a new reality every 10 seconds. And it's true. Like you can just choose. But all those conditioning, like, block your energy, so you can't see past that. You limit your options. Like, oh no, this is not the way I should do it. No, that might be wrong. No, this might be hurtful. And all that, if you think about it, like for me, conditioning just feels very
limiting.
Versus allowance just feels so expansive. Like, oh, that could be, or oh, this is not working right now, so why can I try that? And in all that, there's no failure or rewards. There just is.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, you know, the accessing the psyche, is it information that we're receiving from an external place? Where is the information coming from? Is somebody sending it to us? Is it angels, guides, God?
I mean, most of everything is the same. We are all the same energy, you know, and we are all connected some way or another. Energy can be explained in, I think, so many different ways. If I speak in the science part, like you were saying, we exist since the uterus of our grandmothers. And this is because a woman's fetus creates its eggs in the 4th month of gestation. Exactly. That was gestación. But yeah, in the 4th month of gestation. And when we women are born, we don't produce more of those eggs, you know? So whatever our grandmother was living, experience, feeling while our mother was in her womb, that imprint is in our biology, like in our DNA. And that goes up to 7 generations, because then my mother, your mother, was inside our great grandmothers, our grandmother was inside. And
Right.
yeah. So in science, spoken about this, there's like that genetic information, which I've perceived it's like our DNA. And this comes from 7 generations, which is like 200 and something people above.
Wow.
But we each have a different cocktail of all of those ancestors. Right? Like that's why we're unique and irrepeatable. So whatever all that information, you have a package, and that package was
package deal.
That package at the end from all this big lineage comes down to mom and dad. So if I were to just narrow it down, you have like 50% of all this of mom and 50% of all this of dad. And then they created us, you, me. And that's also how we can explain like siblings, even though we come from the same mother and father, have a complete different information. So biologically, we have a different cocktail of 7 generations, and that holds a memory in the tissue, like in our physical tissue and memory, and then also has to do with our environment. It's not the same for people that grew up in an urban or in a, chaotic civilization. Your the way you react to the environment is very different if you grew up in a field and you're just used to running around and seeing a sunrise and a sunset. You're in a slow pace. You're more connected with nature. I don't know, maybe talk to animals and create all this, you eat the fruit and vegetables that are in that season, and you're more aligned with the cycles and the nature, versus if you grew up in a city where you have access to everything all the time and all the fruits and there's no cycles. There's just lots of information coming in. It's overwhelming as well, So your environment also conditions the way you're receiving and perceiving energy and how you're processing it. And then you go into schools, and that's how the systems start.
So when this is like the stuff that is how we perceive the signs, but I really would love to hear from you about like where is it when you're channeling? What's the channel connecting you to? Like, where is the information coming from?
There's not one specific source. The source is everything. It can be the bird that's singing right there. It can be the vibration of this plant. It can be whoever was sitting in this chair before, because there's energy of the persons that have sat here. It can be the energy of the space I'm in at this moment. It can be energy from Israel, because I happen to be with you and you come from there. So you have that in your energy field. So it really doesn't have to do with one source. Everything is the source or a source. It just depends where I'm placing myself in that moment. So if I'm at the beach and I'm walking barefoot, maybe it comes from the sand or the ocean or the wind or the elements of nature. If I'm in Mexico City, it comes from the chaos of all the conversations, everything that, people are on their phones, and my energetic field is connecting to an environment. So there's not one source.
Okay. So when we speak about like psychic connection, connecting to energy of the world and of ourselves, I understand what you mean, that it's just like connecting to the energy that's available to you. We spoke about it coming through signs, symbols. Is there any other ways that this energy can come into us?
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, Yandara.com,
to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode.
I mean, one of the signs, for example, that happens to me, or one that I've worked with a lot that my mother taught me actually, is with songs. So sometimes when I need to know a message, I put the radio on in random and I say, the next song is going to tell me whatever I need. And there you go. It happens.
Yeah. I so relate to that. I find that also, like, sometimes I start humming a song that I haven't heard before, and then I'm like, wait, that's actually exactly relevant to what's happening in my life right now.
Yeah, I do have a beautiful example about that one specifically. When I used to do a very long trip with my girlfriends when I lived in California, and my tocaya will allow me to share this story because it's a beautiful one. I showed her the game of the songs, you know, and I'm like, you just have to ask for something and then it will reveal to you through the music. She looked at me like, you're woo-woo, but I'm playing. We have like 5 hours to drive, so let's play. And we were in college, and of course, that's a time of men and boys, and you want to know what's going to happen. And anyway, she asked something about like a specific ex-boyfriend who had just reappeared in her life randomly. And she's like, oh, this guy just reappeared, like, you know. So she asked, and this beautiful love song came through of how he was ready to be with her, and he was going to come and propose, and this was it. And
wow, we
came back from Vegas. He showed up and literally dedicated her that song.
No.
And they've been together ever since.
Oh my God.
They did not, like, after that trip, they've been together ever since. They have 2 beautiful kids. They live in Cali. I love them. And yeah, it's just like the signs are always there.
That's incredible.
If you're willing to ask, they're always there.
And again, I think it relates to how you interpret the signs, right? Every sign, like a sign for me might not be a sign for you.
Yeah. And another example, my mom was like a visionary of the future. I always say she was a woman of the future. And she showed me how to speak this energy language since I was at such a young age. You know, since I was a kid, she knew exactly about it. It was not her era, definitely, and she was very judged by this, but I am so grateful that she actually passed that medicine here. And she would always tell me to ask questions and signs, you know. So when I needed to make a decision, she showed me this, like, choose 2 different words, like circle or square. So circle is yes and square is no. So randomly, I'm at a store sometimes, and I don't know if I should get something or not. And I just I know it's weird, but circle or square. And whatever they say, I just trust. Like, if it was circle, it's a yes, and square, my friends are now accustomed to the woo-woo-ness, and they usually get a weird text message sometimes. It works with colors, and if you don't want to do like circle or square, I sometimes just pick 2 colors, you know, like green, yes, blue, no, but I don't give them options. So I would tell you, like, what color? And then whichever you name first, it might not be the first one, but whichever you name first, that's the correct answer. So there's like a million ways to play with it. And I've been doing this for since I can speak. So.
Wow. So you told me also about experiences where you knew something was going to happen before it actually happened. Is that something that everybody can access? And if yes, can you share a little bit about it?
I believe yes. I do not know how everybody accesses it. Me as a child, and the way I've been able to see it every time is, for me, it happens in my dreams before it happens. And when we're children, I will say children have that imaginary world a lot more alive. So it is important, if you have kids, to allow them to have that imaginary friend, to speak with that imaginary, because they are communicating through energy.
Wow.
And sometimes we shut that out. You know, it's like, oh no. But that imaginary friend can be an energy, you know, and we're not used to that. So for me, it came as dreams. Like I would see things that were going to happen before time. And then the next day I knew exactly what was happening. Like not my entire day, but to give you an example, we used to go to my grandmother's house for lunch, you know, so I would wake up and I would be like, oh, my uncle is going to be wearing his red sweatshirt and my cousin is going to be wearing his blue pants and we're going to sit down and we're going to play domino. But I would say specific details, you know, and one day actually to try myself out and like prove my point to my cousins because they teased me that I was woo-woo, obviously. Yeah, I was, still am. Now I embrace it. And now they see I'm not that woo-woo. I remember we were playing domino and I grabbed and I was like, I'm not even going to look at them. I'm just going to pick it and put it on. And whichever it is I take, I know I'm going to win this game. And they're like, there's no way. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I literally did it and I won it. And I never looked at the pieces. Like that was full trust of my crazy dream. And I was just like so certain about it.
Wow.
And that's it. Like I never passed everyone. I grabbed it. I'm like, oh, it fits there.
Wow, that's incredible. And actually, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I've had a feeling for a long time that I dream things that are going to happen. Because like, I think actually it was in Mexico City one day that I walked in the street and I arrived to this intersection that I've never been at before. And in that moment, I just had a knowing that I've seen this place in a dream before. And it happened to me a few times. And I was already asking a few people if that is something that happens. And of course, everybody was like, no, what are you talking about? It's just a dream. So that now that you say it, it's really cool. And I've been very curious about the dream world because I think it does tell us way more than we realize that it does. So I've been very curious about channeling and speaking with energy or communicating with energy around me. Maybe you can explain to me and anyone watching, how do we hone our psychic abilities or our ability to communicate and channel from places other than our limited 5% psyche?
So the first I would invite you to do is to see which is the sense you have highlighted yourself the most, because most likely that will be the sense that will give you the most information. So for example, if you're a musician, most likely you will get the messages through sound. Okay. If you're a chef, you might get the messages through taste and food and putting all this together. So the sense that you have highlighted the most throughout your life is usually the easiest one to start to communicate with.
Interesting. What is that for me? I think maybe I have a lot of throat chakra stuff.
Here you are doing a podcast.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And before I started with the podcast, while I was at Yandara, every single card I would open from any deck anywhere, it was all about throat chakra.
So the voice.
Yeah.
So voicing, so the vibration, sound a bit, but it has to do with sound. The voice has to do with sound.
Yeah.
So, and you do get messages through music. Yeah. So there you go. There's another check to what you just shared.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So sound might be one of them for you, so maybe you receive information through sound healings, kurtangs, singing, chanting, listening to music.
Yeah.
Maybe that's...
Or also talking, conversations, videos, lectures, sessions. Yeah.
listening and voicing. Yeah, they're connected.
And actually, in our session together, my channel came through language. Like it just was words that wouldn't stop coming out. I had so much to say, and it wasn't from me coming. It was just coming through me.
Yeah.
So cool.
Totally. So the first one would be, which is a sense you work or perceive the best, or the one you've highlighted the most. The second thing I've noticed a lot, and it also happened to me, is when you start accessing the energy world, fear starts to come, because if I can't predict the future, it's scary. And when I used to dream as a kid, like when I dreamed fun dreams, it was awesome. But when I had nightmares, it was horrible, because if my dreams were to come true, I was going to be kidnapped. So, yeah. So that fear blocked a lot. I will say that I also work between like life and death, because it's energy, it's the same realm. And the first encounter I had with death itself, I don't think I was mature enough to handle that at that moment, like the first time it presented to me. And it scared me. It was very traumatizing, even like the connection I had. I was a teenager and I shut down and I blocked down because I felt so much uncomfortable and uncertainty. And usually in the energy realm, there's a lot of uncertainty and it feels very uncomfortable. So what I've noticed is when people start to connect with that, they kind of block it, because you create this fear or resistance, like, I don't know if I want to see that.
Yeah.
So what I will say has been the medicine for me is to have a pure intention, to not use it for good or bad, to just use it for information. And that has really helped. So the intention that you use that energy for will either bring peace or war. So if it brings peace, use it. But if you feel war, maybe your intention for using it is not clear or is not being coherent with what it is, with what you actually want to use it for. And another thing I will also suggest, sometimes I've worked with mediums before where they like receive a lot of information and then they just go and vomit it out to somebody else, and that somebody else might not be ready to receive that information. So another very important thing I've learned is to ask for permissions.
From the person you're communicating the information for.
Exactly. Or even for the energy that you're feeling, like sometimes I felt some very crazy energy, and before I connect, like to avoid the fear, I become a channel. I'm like, for whatever reason it is that I am receiving this energy, allow me to be a channel of service and detach myself from like whatever, because the ego plays games, and the mind, she's there. It's part of us. And we have to learn to detach from that, because that can sometimes not play in our favor.
Right.
So when I feel very vulnerable, I just say, like, if I'm perceiving or receiving this, I just want to be a channel for it, to just whatever it is I'm perceiving it for, just put it to service or go through me or not stay, or, you know.
So you're kind of like asking permission of the mind to step back and let the information come through.
Yeah, because then the mind can just
take
over. And if I do receive information for somebody else, sometimes I receive information and I just ignore it. I'm like, no, I don't know how to communicate this to this human. I'm sorry. But sometimes they have come like, I need you to be a channel for me for this. Like, yeah, especially people on the other side that they like have something to clear with. This is not something I've chosen. Now I've surrendered to it. Like I did with my cousin in the beach, somebody showed up And I was like, well, I have a message for you. I don't know if you're open to receive. It comes from this person. He's like, yes. And it was very uncomfortable. So I actually said, I'm not going to put it in words. I'm just going to be a channel. And at that moment, what I did is I connected whatever person is to my heart chakra through my cousin's heart chakra. And I created the communication to flow from the heart to the heart. Because I didn't want, like, it was such a vulnerable moment and family, and it was so strong that I was like, I don't even need to put it into my words.
And that just comes to you. You're sitting on the beach and like this person comes knocking on your hypothetical door and is like, I have a message.
Yeah. I mean, I was speaking
How
with
does
my...
it show up?
Yeah, it just comes. Like whenever it happens, it just comes.
And you know the name of the person and all of that? Wow.
Yeah, and that can be a person, or for example, yesterday, there's a friend that I really care for. He's working with some energy, and I know he's been struggling with that specific energy. And he kind of allowed me to enter his field, and my friends sometimes do it, or my patients are like, I give you permission if you have any message for me, please, but I always ask for permission before. He had given me the permission, and yesterday I met up with him and I was like, okay, so I know you've been wondering about these energies. I do have a message for you. Do you want to receive it? He's like, yes. So that was more about an emotional way that was really blocking him, and he was just not getting through. And I saw like the passage, and so I gave him the message, and he's like, yes, that makes sense. I was like, okay. And I don't need to know it. For him, it was worded out.
Yeah.
Because that was the way it came, and it had nothing to do with anybody else. It was something he's personally been working on. So sometimes it comes like that, or I have a patient, or in my circles of women that I give, they put a comment in the chat that's like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I find myself texting. When I read it, it's like, wow, did I text that? Like, sounds so smart. Doesn't look like me.
Who is that talking?
Who's that? Wow. And sometimes I'm even like, I sometimes tell them, like, definitely not me, girls. This was the psychic, like that's a message from beyond. And now I'm learning to accept it more and more that, part of it is me and part of it is the channeling, and not having to tell which part of it and just accepting. So sometimes it comes through writing out a message and my fingers just start typing things that when I read them, I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. That's in there somewhere.
Amazing. And I think that also connects with, like, you and I were speaking the other day about how each one of us are a manifestation in our individual form, but in the end, even our soul is not separate from the whole energy fabric that is all of life. So just kind of to wrap this up, is there anything else that you think somebody should know about designing their energy suit, or communicating with their energy, or receiving messages? Anything about that? Maybe a channeling that wants to come through?
I will say everybody has the power to do it. I will also say that we're in an era that every day more and more these tools are being more open and normalized. When I started yoga 10 years ago, it was actually not even a thing in Mexico City, and it was huge in California, and now it's huge worldwide, so if you have any of that lighten up, don't wait for it to be a thing to feel safe, Look for someone, whoever it is, that makes you feel safe to explore it. There's a lot of different techniques, therapies, ways of exploring your energy. So yeah, and there's a lot of them out there, you know, every day more and more. I would suggest though, stay with someone that makes you feel safe and not judge, that allows you to be. Because for my own personal path, the teachers I've had and the people that have joined and walked the path with me have had these qualities, you know. They've created a safe space, an accepting space. They've accepted my brightest bright and my darkest dark. And for me, that's been huge, like to be able to have teachers and people and friends that do not judge me and know how to hold space, not only when I'm at my best, but also when I'm at my worst. Also to become that person for somebody. So instead of waiting for somebody to be that person for you, start by being that person for someone else. You know, that's the best way to start. And we all have them. Like, we all have the quality. The psychic is just the word I finally found to put everything I am or everything I do in the rational world where I live box. The word to describe who I am. But I think energy is where everything's energy. We are all energy. And something that I did learn in healing hypnosis, you know, is that for our soul to experiment everything, we have to go through the full range of the rainbow, you know, which is like from the brightest white till the darkest black, and just allow everything to just be without judgment. And there will days where you will be your best self, and there will be days that you will be your worst self, but that is also needed. So, you know, like, I want to go more there and I do not want to go there. And that said, there's good or bad people. You know, I don't believe there's good or bad people. Personally, I believe we are all just teachers and mirrors of each other, of what it is we need to highlight and work on. So for me, my light or dark, or your light or dark, is either highlight more of this, and these are your areas of opportunities to transit whatever your soul's purpose is. And with that, I will just add something else that does come from healing hypnosis. We grew up in a world where we think that our soul purpose has to be something huge and we have to create all of this, you know, and your soul's purpose are usually the most subtle things. Like, you might just be here to learn to forgive, or you might be here to learn to give forgiveness, and you might be here to learn to love, or to allow yourself to receive love. Usually the soul's purpose are a lot more subtle than what we make ourselves, the mind and the doing part, to be. That's just ego.
Wow, that's so profound. So all that, like, I meant to create a house of healing is just the ego.
It is.
And what's under that?
What's under that is a safe space for people to come and be nurtured and be loved, because I know what it's not, but it feels not to be nurtured and be loved, you know?
I love that, because when we try to create, like, it can seem so daunting and scary to focus on this huge house of healing, or anybody with their own vision. But once we really focus on the underlying values or qualities that are the focus of it, like healing, safety, judgment-free, gratitude, forgiveness, anything, you know, for each person different, then it takes the pressure of like, I need to achieve all these things. And it allows that subtle energy to pull us instead of kind of like being in a chase.
So what I will say, this just came as you were speaking, is our soul's gift has to do with our soul's biggest struggle. So whatever it is you have struggled the most with or in, and most likely the place where most pain you've received is your truest light and the soul you come to shine. The light you come to shine into everybody else, because nobody else understands that struggle and that pain better than you. And that's how you can give back.
I love that. Last question. What are you curious about right now?
I am curious about where this is gonna take me. There's a lot of like, I am creating an identity brand and putting this title of psychic and putting, the rational mind, I know, needs this structure to communicate into this rational world. But there's also this other energy part of me that says like, do I really need that? Or should I just continue and allow things to be unfolding the way they've been unfolding? So I'm curious of how much I actually need to do. Like, am I gonna go big and social media and marketing, or am I just gonna keep it quiet, word of mouth, and people are just gonna come and show up because that's just it? There's this struggle between the energy world and the rational world I also live in.
Yeah. How do you navigate that?
I try to trust and surrender every day more. And yeah, it's a struggle, but whenever I find myself struggling, I remind that that's my time to surrender.
Beautiful. Ana, thank you so much. This has been so lovely.
Thank you. Thank you to Yandara and the Yandara community. My gratitude for this school, place, where it's at, is usually actually where I live now. And a lot of this is thanks to this place and this community and all of them. So there's a huge gratitude for the Yandara community, and it's a true honor to have been here. Thank you.
The honor is mine.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home, to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.